Hi, good afternoon, everyone, or morning, depending on where you're calling from. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for our 4D Construction Benefits and Best Practice webinar. We're going to kick things off. This webinar will be approximately an hour, and I will be recording this webinar, and it will be available tomorrow in UltiPro under the course section. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Ana Maria Torres, and I'm part of the Data and Digital Engineering team. I'll be today's moderator for any technical support and making sure everyone understands how to use the Zoom Q&A feature to ask our in-house expert questions. So joining me today from the VDC team is Michal Rahman from our VDC team. He's a VDC coordinator, and he'll be guiding us through today's webinar and demo. So just let's review a couple of things. So I'd like down at the very bottom of your Zoom window, if you scroll your mouse, you will see three icons appear: the chat, raise hand, and Q&A. And you can use these icons. So the first one is the chat. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, feel free at any point to type your message in. Just make sure that in the to section, you're selecting host, and that way I can go in and help you. I'll be monitoring the chat. During the Q&A, you will also have the opportunity to raise your hand, and I will unmute you so that you can ask a question. We are going to hold a Q&A session after Mesh's demo, so I would suggest that you hold off until the very end. And then the Q&A is actually where you can actually type in your questions, and then we will be able to read them to Mesh at the end. Okay, so I'm going to turn things over to Mesh, who's going to be sharing some insight into the 4D construction benefits and best practices. Thank you. Mesh, over to you.
Thank you. Sorry, one second. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Monday afternoon and morning. So today I'm going to do a presentation on 4D construction model benefits and best practices. So the purpose of this presentation is to explain to everyone what a 4D model is, how it can add value to your project. I want to describe some general requirements, some best practices, and also what 4D support the VDC team at Ellis Don can provide to your project. So let's start off by asking the question, what is a 4D model? In general, since the construction industry is a very fast-paced, project-based industry, there's a lot of high-risk activities involved. So including a 4D model in the early stages of any project allows you to review the high-risk activities. It allows you to review complex site logistics, and it allows you to propose designs as a whole and identify possible discrepancies early on. So in general, when you have, so the 4D model adds time-related information to the 3D BIM models. This allows for the detailed scheduling of the construction process. For the most part, a lot of you might be familiar with 2D CAD assets or drawings. A lot of times, these drawings sometimes can be generated through the 3D models that the clients or the consultants may actually have. And a lot of project teams actually work off of the 3D model assets as well. So a lot of times when you end up getting a schedule, you already have all of the required elements that you might need to create a very general 4D model. Later on in this presentation, I will show you all some differences in different types of 4D models that you can integrate within your team. And so, yeah, let's get started. So first off, I want to speak about some of the advantages of using 4D models. Now, there are countless advantages, And we have still not been able to explore all of these yet within the construction industry, because just in general, we are still working to make sure that we're implementing 4Ds as early as possible, since a 4D model can be a valuable tool for coordination and scheduling. It allows you to reduce a tremendous amount of uncertainty, ambiguity, and inherent risk in both civil and building projects. With the addition of construction schedules, and when you add them to a 3D digital model, every stakeholder, that includes the project team, that includes the clients, that includes future teams that might come in to do works, it gives everyone an exhaustive image of the project from design to completion, and that includes changes. And that's why at the top here I wrote 4D models play a vital role in the cradle to grave infrastructure that Ellisdon strives to incorporate into every project. So some of these advantages are, 4D models can assist with an understanding of design, construction schedule, and logistics in the complex stages, again, in pre-construction and construction. It helps increase safety and reduce risk. Now, these are things that you're going to hear over and over and over again, because these are things that I have seen in many projects that 4D models have actually implemented within the site, because having better information and having better clarity in general will reduce the risk, as everyone is on the same page and there's no discrepancies between the construction team, consultants, and trades. 4D models can also help improve delivery times. It definitely mitigates bottlenecks because you're able to see ahead. And so that will essentially in turn help you make sure that if there are bottlenecks coming up, you are able to kind of work around that. And that includes staging for materials on site and so on. So 4D models also increases the level of sustainability that you're able to achieve at a project by ensuring that you can implement pour breaks into your 4D models to make sure that the pour breaks are the most efficient ones that you're using. You can ensure that the staging on site is done properly, so you're not wasting either time, energy, or manpower moving things around. And finally, 4D models allow for complex changes to be easily conveyed using a visual medium. Now, I believe that is one of the most important things in 4D models. Something I have found out is using 4D models, I have shown them to high school students, and they were able to understand very complex stages in construction. And I'm not saying that our clients are high school students. However, a lot of times information gets very easily skewed when many things are added on. So for example, when you have a very complicated schedule that you're trying to work with logistic models, things will be missed. And unfortunately that occurs. So having that involved, having the 4D model come in where you can see it very easily using a visual medium that, oh, certain things were missed or certain things were not implemented, you can address those changes very early in the project before going to site or while you're in site prior to things actually occurring. So again, 4D models have many advantages that enable leaner, better coordinated, and recorded projects. Data retention and collection is extremely important in terms of risk management for current and future projects. So when you are utilizing a 4D model, it can help you verify schedules and construction sequencing. It reduces issues during mobilization and improves site logistics and safety on site. Something I want to emphasize is 4D models are very versatile. When you're creating 4D models, you don't necessarily need all the information that I might be mentioning throughout this presentation. You don't need a full schedule. You don't need a 100% completed schedule. You don't need a 100% completed logistic model. 4D models are there to be implemented early on so it can keep up with all these changes and not so much jumping ahead, trying to make the whole model from scratch. It's a lot better to have them involved early on so there is room for movement. So going forward, we can talk about some of the typical requirements for 4D models. Once again, these are just typical requirements. So that means that these are just for typical projects certain projects may require more information, other projects might require less information. So please don't use this list as an exhaustive resource. Feel free to contact me after the meeting or contact Daniel, and we can kind of help you clarify what you might need for the specific project that you're at. So in general, one of the things that we primarily ask for, and I'm sure you understand why, is because we need the consultant/trade models of the project for the required scope. And that includes the structural, architectural, building envelope, MEP, so on and so forth. It completely depends on what you want to see a 4D of. Sometimes we have had clients come in and say, we want to see just the architectural elements being placed up or just the structural, and everything else just stayed in place. So it is very versatile in terms of what you want to see being shown in the 4D model. So something else that we also request is the construction schedule. And I mentioned that it's in multiple formats because I understand we have different schedules from project to project, and we use different resources. For some projects, we use Primavera P6 for scheduling, and for other projects, we use Microsoft Project. So just to keep things simple, a lot of times I request an XML format from both Primavera P6 and Microsoft Project. And if you have your team working on Microsoft Project to establish schedules, I may also ask for an MPP. Usually this helps make sure that there's less conversions, because when you have schedule conversions, issues and errors might actually pop up. Something else is logistic drawings or models. Now, logistic drawings aren't always required, but if you have logistics on your site and you have them showing on the schedule, a lot of times, if we have the logistic drawings, the VDC team has an internal repository of a vast array of logistic models that includes cranes, that includes pumps, hoarding. And so if you want to see those things on your project, that's something that you can discuss with either the 4D coordinator or Daniel or myself, and we can actually help you integrate those things into your 4D model. A coordination meeting to discuss the scope of work is also somewhat required for pretty much all projects. Having a conversation with the scheduler, the logistics, and also the VDC coordinator and the project team really helps expedite the level of information that we are implementing on the 4D model. It makes sure that we're all on the same page and make sure that when we are missing certain elements, we can actually discuss it and make sure that we're having everyone's back in a sense. The final thing that is on this list is a contact list for the parties involved. So that means the project manager, schedule, logistics, and coordinator. So having that information will really help expedite the process of having a 4D model created. So here are some general recommendations. Something I want to mention is there's a lot more recommendations that I have on the actual 4D best practices document. So if you are interested, please, again, feel free to reach out to me, or I'll make sure that the best practices document is actually integrated with the presentation once it's being uploaded to Ultra Pro. So in terms of general requirements, having a lot of this information, I tell this to all project teams that it can also help the project management team in understanding the level of information that the project team has. So this includes the design model, construction schedule, logistics, etc. And this information, making sure that we have all of this information in one place, can help support the management team in requesting any necessary adjustments from the consultants or trades to help reduce and lower the risk of the project. Again, having this information prepared in advance also helps expedite the 4D model creation. An early discussion is actually vital to ensure that the project team receives all the information that they are looking for. The list above is that we mentioned in the general recommendation or general requirements is just a list for typical projects again, and other information may be required even when it comes to general recommendations. So establish a conversation with your VDC coordinator as early as possible in the project lifecycle. Open communication is the key. So that goes in all aspects of construction. I'm sure I don't have to go into that too much further. And workflows for one-time 4D models will differ from models that are expected to be updated continuously. So we have 4D models that are for pursuits, which are just a video or some sort of marketing thing that we can use to show to clients how we actually establish 4D models and how we plan on building out a project. However, there are other 4D models that we implement on to site projects where we actually track everything that's happening on site with a 4D model to make sure that the project is on track and any changes that might come up from the consultant are actually reflected on the model. For example, there are certain times where new columns might be actually implemented. And when you have a 4D model, the VDC coordinator will know instantly as they integrate the model into their 4D total model that certain columns or certain elements in the structure hasn't been properly associated because it hasn't been there from the beginning. And then finally, a well-executed 4D video takes time and coordination to complete. Plan for additional time is if visualization of logistics on the 4D model is required. But once these elements are actually placed in, there's actually quite a lot of perks that the site team actually gets on the project. So going forward, we're going to talk about 4D models, and I'll come back to some of the other perks later on in this presentation. So the first type of 4D models that LS-DOM VDC can produce is schematic 4D models. For projects with short deadlines that do not require multiple iterations, either they have limited 3D model information, schedule information, or only require a basic level overview, the following are available. So both of these projects we created without a total schedule. The only thing we had for both of these projects was a general overview of the site and a conversational schedule that was essentially established with logistics to say, okay, so this is what's going to happen after one step after the other. And we're able to show that off in a model. And for the video, the schematic video below, you can see that it looks a little bit fuzzy. And that's because that's actually a scan of the site. So we didn't actually have models of the site. So we established the VDC scanning team. We sent them out to actually get a scan of the entire location. So we have that for future reference. Again, this can really assist the team by creating as-builts, and also it helps us create a very general idea of how the project is going to progress. Something to clarify here is I keep saying 4D models, and then now we're going to 4D images and 4D videos. Just to put in the distinction, a 4D model is a model that doesn't have a video, it doesn't have images, anything like that. It's essentially the model, the 3D model has the schedule attached to it. Now, to create the video, the VDC coordinator might have cameras panning around, showcasing certain elements, and then that's essentially the break off to 4D videos, and 4D images are just very standard screenshots of specific changes that might be occurring. So going forward, another type of 4D models is actually the standard model. Now, this is a very typical, the typical 4D that we usually create. So for projects that have considerations for project schedules, logistics, these projects require multiple updates with an overview of the total project. So when you have certain things like this, what we usually end up doing is you have additional information. So for example, and needs. So that includes that you want to see, cranes. Certain cranes might change over a specific time. There's demolition. There is very specific elements that might need to occur. And so for that, we have the standard 4D videos and standard 4D models, where the standard 4D model has logistic elements. It has the full model with multiple updates. And finally, it has changes such as like schedule changes as well. So we can implement that as well in standard 4D videos and models. Finally, there is the detailed 4D models. Now, these are models that require an in-depth 4D study and require the VDC coordinator to work very closely with the team. These 4D models may include special modeling to showcase specific requirements for logistics and construction, or to explain very complicated construction sequencing to the project team. So for instance, it also allows you to understand very large scope projects, to understand what we can close, where there might be issues with access and things like that. We can show that off in the 4D video. So up above, you can see a detailed 4D image of a project where it's a RER project, where we were demolishing certain tracks, and other tracks were reopened for access, and we were making sure that the clients and the team knows which tracks are staying open, which tracks are closing. And with this, we created a staging procedure. So there was stage A, B, C, D, where we showed the progression of these stages using these images. And finally, down below, you can see the detailed 4D videos, which essentially this project has a core, and the core we essentially hid for clarity, because once the core gets fully erected, what ends up happening is certain slabs have to be demolished and then reinstalled to make sure that everything lines up. And because of that, that was a decently complicated procedure, and we wanted to make sure that the project team understood exactly how we plan on doing that. And that's why we had to make sure that we showed a very detailed, detailed video with multiple cuts. So this isn't the only cut that was made for this video. There's additional cuts that were made, additional clips that were created. So the project team, the trades, everyone understood exactly what the progression of the demolition of the slabs and the installation of the slabs would, and the progression of how they would occur. So 4D models are as detailed as your schedule. And that's why a lot of times I really request that the coordinator works closely with the logistics team and also the scheduling team, because when you have certain elements that might come up when the 4D modeler works with the scheduling team, we can actually ensure those minute details are actually implemented. So going forward, so here are some case studies. And so far, 4D models have assisted project teams coordinate and reduce risk by doing these certain things. So assisting logistic element placement. So we can ensure that logistic elements that are placed won't conflict with additional things that come up later down the line. So that includes if you have multiple stage construction and you're planning on installing in cranes, we want to make sure that those cranes aren't actually interfering with other objects in the area. This also includes staging of materials to ensure that if you have an ongoing project where you have a VDC coordinator creating a 4D model, you can actually ensure that when they are creating staging, so for example, staging of rebar and so on and so forth, you can make sure that the cranes can actually actively reach those areas and keep things coordinated and cleaned up like that. Additionally, it helps you find missed schedule elements. So on certain projects, what would happen is, let's just say you have a large building that's going up in multiple stages. There might be the residential tower section and there might be the office tower section. Sometimes the consultants come in and they actually model those two sections separately. So for one of my projects, we had the residential tower section. They were being erected as, they weren't being erected, sorry, they were being poured as pour breaks. So it was a shear wall going down the middle of the building. And then after the residential section was over, they actually transitioned to erecting of steel beams. So we noticed in the schedule early on that we did not actually establish that going forward after a certain section, it would be not pour breaks or not pours anymore. It would be steel erections. And that somewhat helped us communicate with the consultants and actually find a easy medium, so we didn't have to make sure that we're changing up, or we made sure that everyone knew exactly what was happening going forward. Something else 4D models can actually assist you with is 4D clash detection. Now, when you have 4D models, a lot of these modeling softwares allows you to install certain elements such as cranes or pumps and or hoists, and you can actually make clash detections based off of 4D elements and movement. So if those cranes are spinning around, you can actually establish a certain range of the crane. And if it goes past that range, you can suggest that there will be a clash in the model. And so you can generate a report based off of that. So it could really help you going forward, making sure that you know where your cranes are placed, you know the kind of movement that they might have. And that could help you choose the types of crane you want to use on your project. So choose the types of logistic elements you're going to be using on your project as well. Something that actively occurred recently was the communication of closures and access. Something we keep mentioning over and over again, 4D videos or 4D models can be used for many things, but one of the most important things it could be used for is communicating information in a very simple way. So in this situation, we had a fairly large project where there will be the bus routes would have been closed off during construction. So an alternate bus route had to be proposed to TTC or whichever company was dealing with the public transit in that situation. So in this situation, we created a 4D which showcased the exact access for the buses and throughout the project. So in the early stages, towards the mid stages, and towards the late stages, and that essentially we took that video and took it to the clients, and we ensured that they understood what changes that they might expect going forward, and that really helped that project out. Additionally, it helps communicate detailed construction procedures. So that includes certain things that might have not been established by the consultants, and they might have been expected to be established by LSDON. And that includes specific shoring for a very difficult level of construction. So we can showcase those and make sure that everyone understands that LSDON has actually taken into account that constructing this will require specific shoring, and we showcase that to the clients, which helps them go forward and say, okay, LSDON, as the project team, they know exactly what they're doing. And finally, 4D models help instill confidence throughout the client's teams. That includes the project team, that includes the trades, that includes the consultants, making sure that if there are any edits that need to be made towards the model, you can show off, you can make different cases using 4D models to showcase changes in schedule based off of different models. And you can bring that up to the consultants to say, hey, look, this would be a lot easier to do. Do you think you can help us out to make sure that this is the way we can actually construct this model or this building, sorry. All right. 4D model sets LSDON apart from others. So when we are submitting proposals in this situation, 4D models does separate us. 4D models can be excellent marketing resources. They can be many things. And so having 4D models established for projects is an excellent way to set ourselves apart from other construction companies and other teams. So in summary, 4D models allow for better project monitoring. It allows for a better transparency and accountability. It helps you clarify schedules and logistics. 4D schedules or 4D construction models also allow for better site management. It helps you find issues before they actually occur on site. And they find the most important of them all is 4D models allow for safer construction sites. And that is my presentation. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too much. There is a lot about 4D models that sometimes a lot of people kind of overlook. For example, like for instance, 4D clash detections. Something like that could be really, really useful in large civil projects where you might have multiple cranes. And it also allows you to see visually exactly what is going on. So I believe 4D models can be really useful for a lot of teams. Now, if you would like to see the 4D best practices, which is a document that myself and my team created for establishing a general questionnaire sheet where you can kind of go through and make sure that you have certain things or have your questions answered, please reach out to me, and I'll also make sure that it's involved in the Alti Pro submission later on. Finally, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at mrahman@lsdon.com or reach out to Daniel at dmessnier@lsdon.com. Finally, so I open up the floor to everyone else. If you have any questions, please let me know. And yeah. Thank you, Brandon. Right. So I'll leave the question stage still open. So if Anna Maria, if you see any questions coming in, please let me know. For the time being, what I can do is I can play this example video, so everyone can see a general idea of how 4Ds are created and how they're actually sent out to certain projects. So this is 481 University, which is a more complicated project than some others, where there is a heritage facade that we had to make sure that we reclaimed, and there was specific shoring that had to go against the face of the facade, and the interior had to be demolished. And once the central core was built out, then the exterior slabs were demolished and then rebuilt. So this is a great example of how what we can actually end up delivering given a good model, schedule, and also really great communication between the project team and the VDC team. Right. I don't know if Anna Maria or
we do have a question.
Sure.
From Brian Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
Are we starting to explore and implement the ability to do progress capturing that updates these 4D models?
Yes, we are. So we actually implement this on a few projects. I can't name any off the top of my head, but if Daniel has any, he will be more than happy to share them with you if you reach out to us later. But we do have progress capturing on a lot of projects. And that's exactly what 4D models are for. They're not just for pursuits, but for instance, in this case, 481 University, it's currently an ongoing project, which in this case, it doesn't have progress capturing, but we're trying to implement this on more and more sites where if there are changes in schedule, if there are changes or delays, we can ensure that those delays are actually implemented on the 4D model so you can see what kind of elements it can actually affect going forward. So hopefully that answers your question.
We also have another one. Have we also explored the possibility of cost loading these models?
Yes, actually. So funny enough, I was going to mention it. So 4Ds, so there is 1D, which is just basic plan drawings, 2D, which is generic, like 3D models, so 3D, which is models, and then finally 4D, which is these that have 3D models that have time associated with it. There's actually a 5D, which actually establishes cost along with this as well. And we have actually done a few of those before. We haven't established them in projects, not that I know of at least, but a lot of times there could have been a running cost counter in the corner alongside with the timeline. So if we can work closely with the project estimation team and also the scheduling team, we can integrate cost analysis on these videos as well as time progresses or as delays occur.
We also have a question from Desi.
Right.
What is the software and hardware requirements like? Anything special?
Not always. It depends on the size of your project. So for example, if you have an LTC long-term care project, which has a lot of elements, you might need a more powerful computer to generate some of these, but a lot of times these don't really require too much heavy lifting. As long as your computer can run, let's just say Revit, a lot of times they are able to export out 4D models because all you have to do is take the Revit elements, attach it to the schedule. But when you're exporting out videos, that's when some hardware requirements could be extended. But for the most part, if for general team-to-team needs, when you have 4D models, you don't need to actually have any crazy machines.
Thank you. And then we have another question from Elisa. Have we ever run a 4D schedule where you have shown the baseline versus actual or updated schedule?
It is very much possible. I have done a few R&D projects on my own where I did showcase those things, where you can have because a lot of the projects that we work on, they end up getting progression updates. So either the entire model changes or the entire schedule changes. Now, what we can do is I can take those two side by side and do a comparison report between the two, which is something that we're working on right now to ensure that we can properly track any changes that might be coming in from consultants, and also properly track any delays that could occur that could actually push up the cost as well. So yes, we're currently working on that. And unfortunately, I don't know if we have actually established this on any specific projects. As of right now, it's still in the R&D phase.
Great, thank you. Just wondering if there's any other questions.
Oh, I think there was a Q&A question that I can see by Prabjeet. Which softwares do you suggest to create a 4D model? So yeah, I stayed away from softwares in this situation because there are many different ways you can create a 4D model. So it depends from site to site. And a lot of times the VDC coordinators might have a very specific software that they use. But a lot of times what I recommend is use what you have first. So for example, if you have Navisworks, a lot of times if you have a schedule coming in, you can actually integrate the schedule into Navisworks to create a very generic 4D model. And that's usually something that a lot of project teams have. Other times, like for more specific 4Ds, so for instance, for my cases, a lot of times I use Synchro, which is similar to Navisworks, but it's more specialized for the scheduling elements. Right. So hopefully that answered your question.
I think that's all. Ash.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you everyone so much. Again, if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to send me an email, send me a message on Hangouts. I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. Yeah.
So special thank you, Mesh, for co-hosting today's Tech Talks. Thank you. And just as a reminder, the recording of this webinar will be available sometime tomorrow. I have actually started the UltiPro course, and I've uploaded the slide deck that Mesh has provided, as well as the best practice document that he was referring to. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.